We'll do a review on Lekutus Sichas in Chelek Chof. This is the second Sicha of the Parshas Vayetzei. It's a Rashi Sicha. And the Rebbe points out that even though at the surface, when you look at the Rashi, it almost seems like Rashi copied the Gemara's commentary word for word. But the Rebbe explains when you look carefully with the way the Rebbe shows us, it shows us that it's totally different. That what Rashi's saying here is totally different than what the Gemara says. And Rashi's issue is something totally different than what the Gemara's issues was. Let's go step by step and see what the Rebbe says here. In the Heintiker Sedra is do a Pirush Rashi. In today's portion, there is a Rashi commentary, was Bahashkofer Rishoina Zet Ois, which at first glance it appears as Rashi hot mighty given that Rashi quoted them Pirush Kemat Ois Beois, that he quoted almost word for word or letter for letter from the Gemara. Aber la'achrei ha'iyun, after looking into it, ubefrat b'diuch lashon Rashi, especially when we look the exact language, the precise language of Rashi Zetman, then you see as Rashi hot derbei got another kavona, that Rashi has a totally different intention here, totally not what the Gemara said. So what are we talking about over here? So the Rebbe brings down the land that you're lying on it. This is what the Eibishter was saying to Yaakov. When Yaakov was on the way to Choron and he fell asleep and they saw it in the dream, the Eibishter told him, that's that the land that you're lying on it, I'll give it to you and to your seed. Zogn Chazal in Gemara, our sages of blessed memory say in the Gemara, is what are we saying here? That the land that you are lying on it, how big is the land that a person that Yaakov is laying on? Small place. Mairebuse, what kind of a novelty is it? David is promising him to give him that small piece of land. Rashi explains that then Hashem promised to give 4 Amos that he was lying in. Is that what Hashem promised to give to his son? Rashi explains. So, Rabbi Yitzchak says, Rabbi Yitzchak Melamed, this teaches us that it was a lot more than just the land that he laid on. It teaches us Shekipla Kodesh Baruch Hu L'chol Eretz Yisrael, that Hashem folded the entire Eretz Yisrael, V'nicho Tachas Yaakov Avinu, and he placed it under Yaakov Avinu. Kidei shetehei noicha lekovish levonov. This is the gears over here. Rebbe brings down in Digdukei Sofrim and other places in the Gemara. Kidei, in order that it should be easy to conquer for his children. Why did the Eibishter place all of Eretz Yisrael underneath Yaakov? This gave them the easiness in order to conquer all the land, the children of Yaakov. Eventually, Kidalid Ames Shel Milishkovei, just as the 4 Ames of where he's lying. This is Rashi explains. Just like the place that he's lying, that's how easy it's going to be to conquer all of Eretz Yisrael. So over here, the Gemara has a question. How could we say that the Eibishter is giving Yaakov the land that he's laying on? It's a small piece of land. The Gemara's question. What is the Gemara's answer? That the Eibishter folded all of Eretz Yisrael underneath Yaakov, and that made it easier for his children later on to conquer it, just as it's easy to conquer 4 cubits. That's the Gemara. Now let's look at the Rashi. Rashi bePirusha Torah stellt sich auf die Werte. Rashi, on the commentary in the Torah, he places himself on the words Shoichev Aleho or Nizbefarish. He says you're lying on it, and Rashi explains Kippel HaKodesh Baruch Hu Kol Eretz Yisrael Tachto. Hashem folded all of the Eretz Yisrael underneath Yaakov where he was sleeping. Ramaz Lo Shetei Noichel Lekovesh Levonov, it hinted to him that it's going to be easy for his sons to conquer. Rashi says that. Lanem Mefarshim, so Mefarshim explain what is Rashi bothered by here. It's like the Gemara. As Rashi is the ois and the zelbashai living Gemara. Rashi is intending here the same question we have in the Gemara. Ma'iribuse, what's the chiddush? He's going to get the land that he's laying on. Und faret wird wie Gemara. Rashi's answer is just like the Gemara. As kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol Eretz Yisrael tachto, that the Eibishter folded all of Eretz Yisrael underneath him. Und der chiddush rebuse wo der Avdoche is, wo der Haftoche is. So what is the novelty? What's the specialty? What's going to take place here is the Eibishter folding it, the promise. So what was the specialty about this promise? It's going to be easy for his children to conquer. Just as it's easy to conquer the 4 amas in which he is lying. Man darf aber verstehen. The Rebbe says if this is really Rashi's questions, Rashi's answer, that it seems like in Rashi it's missing, because in the Gemara, when the Gemara says Shetei Noicha Yaakov, it says Shetei Noicha Lekavish Lefonov. Rashi adds the explanation what's going to make it easier, just like the 4 amas that he's laying on. So how come if Rashi means that it's going to be easy for his children to conquer, Rashi means the same thing as the Gemara. So why does Rashi not explain? If Rashi in the Gemara needs to explain that it's easy to conquer, just like 4 amas of a person lying, why didn't Rashi say this also Gedal Amas Shel Mishkove? If this is what Rashi means with his answer. Since even in Rashi's commentary for the Gemara, for the Shas, Darf Rashi Moshe Zayin de Hasbor, Rashi adds to add the explanation. If Losh Gemara on top, the Gemara says Shetei Noichel Lekavish Levonov, it should be easier to conquer for his children. That's the Losh of the Gemara. Rashi adds Kedal Damas Shel Mishkovei, to make it as easy as the 4 amas you're laying out. That is what Rashi explains the Gemara. Is doch kolshkein azar gedaft moisiv zayin od die Wörter v'hasbora. So for sure that Rashi should have added these words and the explanation in sein Pirush LeTorah, in Rashi's commentary for the Torah. Was is geschrieben geworden, kemeduber kamupom, in which Rashi has written, as spoken to already many times, also for a 5-year-old who's learning Chumash. So Rashi needs to explain even more than he explains the Gemara, which is for older child. So here in the Gemara, Rashi explains how it makes it easy, like the Dal Ramas Shel Mishkove. And in the Rashi, in the Chumash, Rashi doesn't add that explanation that it's going to be easier, like the Dal Ramas Shel Mishkove. The Rebbe is getting at that this Rashi is talking about something totally different, as we will see. Base, if the Rebbe says, if Rashi's problem is that, what's the big deal when Hashem says to him, the place that you're laying on, Rashi should have quoted from the Pasuk Haaretz, the land, Asher Ato Shoichev. Why does Rashi only bring down the words Ato Shoichev? Because the whole question is, how is this land that you're laying on a big deal that the Eibishter is giving? Base. If the Schwerigkeit in Posik is my rebuse, if the difficulty in the reverses. So what's the Chiddush? Wie kann man sagen? As der Eibishter hat ihm auf dir gegeben, bloß Dalet Ames von dem Ores. How could we possibly say, that's the question as the Gemara is asking, that Hashem only promised him to give him 4 Amos from the land? Isn't it glatik? That's not understood so well. Rashi hat gedarft meitig sein vom Posik euch die Wörter ha'oretz asher ato shechev Allah. The land that you, that's the question. The question is the land that you're laying on, how are you giving that small piece, Daled Amos, is that what you're giving, promising him? Warum die Schwierigkeit ist doch nicht in the Wörter shechev Allah far sich. The difficulty is not in the words that you're lying on their own, but in them was their shetach ha'oretz, the area of the land, Asher Ata Shechav Allah, is Gor Klein, is Daled Abbas. From them is move on. From this understood, no, that this is not Rashi's really problem, because Rashi would have quoted ha'oretz Asher Ata Shechav. So that understood as Leipshuta Shel Mikra, according to the simple Pshat in the Pasuk B'Meila, by Rashi is nicht schwer the Shaila from the Gemara. It's not, Rashi doesn't have the question of the Gemara, as the Mefarshim wanted to say that Rashi's question, Rashi's problem is the Gemara's problem, my rebuse. Nerabavoren blois, but Rashi's only answering here. Ashverikait in the Werter Shoichev Allah Alein. He's trying to add something about Shoichev Allah, you're relying on, not how could this be the whole area that Hashem is promising, because or else he would have quoted from the Pasuk Haaretz. Al derech zeh, those was state, those was shetei neichel kovish lefonov, that it's going to be easy to conquer for his children, Weisman, nit von dem Goydel shetach haaretz shatu shechev alo. This we know not because there is a big land, because that is also, Rashi would have quoted, if the answer that it's going to be Lekovish Lefonov is that this big land, still he should have quoted the artist. But that has nothing to do with that. This that we know that it's going to be easier to conquer is nit from them goydel shetach haaretz asharat shechev Allah, not because of the size, since it's a large area and this is going to be like Daled Amos, because then Rashi would have quoted it. But no, from the Werter Shechev Allah Gufa, we learn it from the Shechev Allah. It's nothing to do with the word audit. Not the question and not the answer. The question is not what's the big deal to give him Daled Amos when it says audits. And the answer is also not that it's telling you the whole land is as easy as Daled Amos. It's a different question and a different answer. The Rebbe is going to explain later on how this is not even a question in Pshuti Shel Mikra, to say the land that you're laying on, that's just pointing out that this is a land, like you're saying, in that place. It doesn't, we're not talking about the size of the place that you're laying on. So in Pshuti Shel Mikra, the Rebbe will explain, B'chlal, it's not a kasha. This is not a question that why is the Pasuk promising him a small place, only Daled Amos. That's not what the Pshuta Shemikra means. Amokim Asherata means that place, all of Eretz Yisrael, that's it. But you're laying, that's a sign for where he's laying at. So that wouldn't be the question. The Rebbe is going to explain that Rashi has a different problem, that why does the Torah B'chlal have to say, Haaretz Ashat Shechev Alo? Why is that? Just say Haaretz, as we'll see later on. We're going to give away the whole Sikha, but that's the Kudah. But anyways, here the Rebbe had two questions. if we should say that Rashi has the same problem as the Gemara, Rashi first of all should have added in the answer, like he adds in the Gemara, Kidalad Amis Shel Mishkove, that it's going to be easier, just like the four Amid. Rashi doesn't say it. And the second one, that the question, uh, uh, if Rashi is bothered by what's the Chiddush giving him the place that he's laying on, then Rashi would have quoted from the pasuk Haaretz and say, well, how should so? How Rabbi says no, not the question, not the answer has connection to the word Haaretz. It's only the words Ata Sheikhav Allah, which Rashi quotes, which is Rashi's point of view. What Rashi explains. The Rebbe is in Ois Beis. The Rebbe in Ois Beis is going to point out that there is another difference between the Lashon of Rashi and the Lashon of the Gemara. In the Gemara, it says the fact that Hashem folded it underneath him made it easier for them to conquer it. But in Rashi, in the Chumash, Rashi says he just hinted to him that it's going to be easier to conquer, but it's not that this helped it make it easier. Let's look inside. Base. In the Etzem HaPirush, Ramaz Loisha Tehei Noicha L'Kovish Lefonav, in his commentary, Dafman Verstehen, we also need to understand over here itself. In Gemara is the Loshen Kofla HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chulu Hidei Shetehei Noicha L'Kovish Lefonav, that Hashem folded it under him Hidei or Shetehei Noicha L'Kovish Lefonav, so that it should be easier. So the Eibishter did this to help them conquer it, so it should be easier. Oh, but Rashi is Mishano Moisu, but Rashi changes and he adds Ramaz Loi, he hinted to him. It's not the Shetehei Noicha Chulu that it's going to be easier. What's in Pashtus is the Chiluk B'neiah. What's the difference between the way it's in the Gemara and the way Rashi says it? Kidei Shetehei Noicha L'Kovish Lefonov meant when we're saying that it should be easier to conquer for his children, that means as those vos kofla Kodesh Baruch Hu Chulu, that Hashem went and folded all of Eretz Yisrael underneath Yaakov, hot oiv giton, that accomplished as Erzol Zayin Noicha L'Kovish Chulu, that it should be easier to conquer. That helped, that kofla that Hashem folded it, that accomplished that. But when we're saying that Hashem hinted to him that it's going to be easier, that only means it's not that Hashem made it easier to that. It only means as der Eibishter hat merames given. That means that Hashem hinted, megala given. He revealed Yaakov and Azar was vet passieren lacher zman. He revealed to Yaakov something which will happen in time. As der kibush haaretz vet zayin noicha, that conquering the land will be easy. But this is not that made it easy. It's not what Hashem did made it easy, as in the Gemara, but just revealing to Yaakov that it will be easy. Why does Rashi change it from the Gemara? Darf man verstehen, was is Rashi mishana from Gemara? Why does Rashi change from the Gemara? Adrabe. The Rebbe says, on the contrary, it would make more understanding, would be better understood if we went with the Gemara. It's to understand, according to the Gemara, as Kofla HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hulot Oiv Giton, that the folding underneath him, that accomplished. That it should be easier, is verstandig, the Neutigkeit in dem Nesa Kippur. Then we understand the necessity why it was needed, this miracle of folding it over. because that's the act of Hashem that made it easier for them. So we needed that miracle. Oib aber zu lieb geben Yaakov aremes Allah osi. But if just to give Yaakov a hint for the future is dos asidis, so then that is telling him what the future is. Wie erzählt früher bei Avraham, as was read earlier by Avraham, durch Diburu Chayetzei, it's through speech and similar, which the Eibishter tells to Avram all the different yonim that will happen to his children, Kigeri Rezeracho, Veretz Leilohem, and Brisbane Absorim. So it was a matter of speech. You didn't have to do an act to show him like a kippel. Darfen then anes and azagreisna, do we then need a miracle and such a great miracle? Was hot nit kein Achize in Teva, which has no hold in nature, zu zusammenlegen ganz Eretz Yisrael unter the Taldamis of Yaakov, to put together the entire Eretz Yisrael under the four Amos of Yaakov. That is something which is a tremendous miracle, just to tell him. If, according to the Gemara, that this is in order to help them, that was the miracle, so we understand. So we needed that because that was necessary to help him, to help the Yidden conquer it. But if, according to Rashi, that he's just hinting to him, why was such a tremendous nes neser? Gimel. Rebbe says that this is something difficult. Maybe Rashi doesn't think that the fact that Hashem folded it at that point many years earlier, this should actually help them. So maybe that's what Rashi doesn't want to learn like the Gemara, but we still have the problem. Why would Hashem tell him the future by folding and not just speaking? We can say, can answer, according to the simple learning in the literal level, it's difficult to say, as those was kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu chulu tachto von Yaakoven soll öfton die Peule von Neuchel Kovish Lefonov. This should accomplish, that this should make up the act, that it should be easier to conquer for his children, which is Kama v'Kama Doiris La'acheris, and many, many generations later on. Their father led him to Rashi. That's what Rashi learns. It was a hint that didn't actually make it easier for them, which Rashi believes that in Pshat we can say it doesn't really fit. As blight over the Shaila, but the question remains still, okay, so you don't want to learn like the Gemara, but Eidos Asidus is the Chalidei Dibur. Usually, how does the Eibishter tell us the future? By speech. We know Hashem doesn't make miracles in waste. Why would Hashem do such a miracle here just to tell him what the future is going to be? Euch is nicht verstandig. The Rebbe further asks, is not understood, that Teuchen HaPirush, Kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chulu, this content of this explanation that Hashem folded, bringt sich euch in Medrash. That's also brought down in the Medrash. Nor dort is der Oiskir. But the conclusion of the Medrash is, not that it should be easier to conquer for his children, nor ki'inish the Omar mint chois reisha didoch. Like somebody says from underneath your head, meaning what is der Mithod der Eibishter gegeben Yaakoven Beilis of Eretz Yisrael. He gave him ownership of Eretz Yisrael. He says, like I said, from under your head, meaning it belongs to you. That's why he says, what's yours? This is going to be your ownership. So even though the Rebbe says that Rashi doesn't want to learn like the Gemara because it's difficult to understand that such a great miracle took place years ago by Yaakov to help his children is not something that Rashi wants to explain. But why can't Rashi explain like the Medrash does? That Hashem gave him ownership. Hein Favos lernt Rashi as the Kippur HaKadosh Baruch Hu is given a remes shetei noichel lekovish libonov. Why does Rashi learn a hint that it's going to be easier to conquer for his children the kosher canal? And then we have a problem. Like above, why would the Eibishter tell him the future through an act and not through speech, as the usual way of informing the future would be through speech? So why does Rashi learn Kippirush HaMedrash? That like the Medrash learns, Ados is given to beweisen the Beilis von Yaakov von Gufa, that was to show to the ownership of Yaakov himself, not what's going to take care a remes for his children in the future, later on, that he'll be able to conquer it. Yaakov, right here and now, shows the Yaakovin of Eretz Yisrael, that your owner, the Bailis, the Bailis of Yisrael, Mintchos Reisha Didoch, underneath your head. From underneath your head is yours. That is all yours. That's what the hint is. So the Rebbe wants to understand if Rashi means what the Gemara, what it seems like it means, that there is a chiddush over here. Why did the Eibishter say, "Oh, how could he be giving to him?" And in order to answer that, Rashi has to say that Hashem folded it underneath. But if Rashi means what the Gemara and it means to say that it's going to be easy, like the Daled Amos that I said before, why does Rashi change from the Gemara that says that this helped him, helped conquer the land for his children? Rashi doesn't learn that because it doesn't really fit to say that what Yaakov did years ago was going to help his children later on. So Rashi says it's a hint, but we still have a problem. Hints for the future, God usually speaks. He doesn't do an act. Hashem doesn't do miracles in vain. But we have an alternative interpretation of the Medrash, that the Eibishter showed Yaakov that it's under your head, meaning you're in charge, you're the boss. So why does Rashi have to come and say a pshat that is going to be easier to conquer for his children later on? Why does Rashi not just say that you are the owner? They should show him the ownership. Dalit. And now the Rebbe is going to ask, let's compare this to what happened with Avram. By Avram, it also is brought down in the Gemara. The Eibishter told him to go back and forth in Eretz Yisrael because it should be easier to conquer. And Rashi doesn't say anything over there. Dalet, to me, in them is noch starker. The surprise here is even greater. Also, with regards to Avram and Zog the Gemara says, as the Tamat Sivui, what's the reason of the command? Kum hishalech ba'aretz, go and walk the land, the length and the width, because I will give it to you. So the Gemara says, is kidei sheyeh noyach lichbash lifnei bonav, so that it should be easy to conquer for his sons. Aber dorten bringt das Rashi nicht herab. Rashi doesn't bring this reasoning for La'orka L'Rochba that it should be easier. Is mashma. So it is saying, why does Rashi not bring this down? As der inyan from Neuchel Lekovish Levonov, that this idea that it should be easier to conquer the land by walking around, through the act of the father, is schwer zu sagen in Derech Hapshat. In Derech Hapshat, that's hard to say. She doesn't buy into that. That act makes it easier. So why did the Eibishter tell him pshat? Rashi doesn't bring down the Gemara. So what is the pshat? Why did the Eibishter the mekuvan? What is the intent from kumis halach ba'oretz in pashtus? Biz as Rashi daf is going to uptaichen beferish that Rashi doesn't even need to translate it explicitly. He doesn't explain it. Avram zolton apuula that he should do an act. Arum gein vu und wie will. He should go around wherever and how he wants. Und keiner stört him nicht, and nobody interferes with him. Can do as he pleases. Meister Balabais, he's acting like an owner. Was beweist sein Balus of Eretz Yisrael, shows his ownership of Eretz Yisrael with Lakamon Siv Zayin as later on Siv Zayin. Ein Farbos lernt Rashi, as the Kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu bei Yaakov is nicht given als Beweis von sein Balus of Eretz Yisrael, Kippirish HaMidrash. So why does Rashi learn that the Kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yaakov is not to show his ownership of Eretz Yisrael, Kippirish HaMedrash, as the Medrash says, but rather that it's going to be easier to conquer for his sons. The Rebbe is asking, since Rashi himself doesn't explain by Avram walking back and forth means that it's easier to conquer, means that Rashi doesn't think that that is really the reason. The reason why he went, the Eibishter told him to go is just to show ownership. So why can't we learn like the Medrash here when the Eibishter said to him that the Oretz Asherata Sheikh Below is to basically show his ownership. So the Rebbe is going to first explain now how this whole question that what is the chiddush that the land that you're laying on seems like a small piece of land. That's not even a question in the pshat, because we're not talking about the size of where he's laying. We're talking about the general place. Hey, the beer in them. The explanation is Im Pshuter shel mikrois melechatchila nitokein ort of der shaila. In the simple meaning of the pasuk, to begin with, there is no room for this question from the Gemara. Mayre buse, what is the chiddush? What is the novelty? Val diverter asher ato sheikhev aloha. These words, that which you are lying upon, meinen nit dem shetach mitzumtzum, does not mean that narrow area of welchen Yaakov is gelegen, on which Yaakov was lying. Nor ha'oretz di land, it means the land. Say heichen of dem Wort ha'oretz. Ato sheikhev aleho, translate what is it meant by ha'oretz, the land. The land, behei ha'idiyah, the known land. Welche land is there meduber? About which land are we talking about? Das Land, the land on which you're laying. We're not talking about the area you're laying. We're talking about the land in which you're laying. I'll give it to you and your children. Der Pfarr stellt sich nicht Rashi euch auf dem, was steht früher by Avram, and that's why Rashi also doesn't place himself, is not concerned. The Pasuk says, Ki as kol ha'oretz asher ato roye l'cho eteneno. Similar Pasuk, the whole land that you see, that I will give you. Hashem says to Avram, the land that you see, is that the limit? Only what he can see? What about beyond his sight? Rashi doesn't explain over there. The l'chayre tumu al derech hanal, but it would seem we have the same surprise like the above. A person can only see on a restricted, narrow place, the far sight that he can see from Eretz Yisrael. Ubefrat, especially it's a mountainous area, so you can't even see that far. Aziz and Eretz Horim Uvekois, it's a land of mountains and valleys. So what is the kavane? So what is the meant from their haftocha as a oretz asher ato royo luchat nenu? What does it mean that the land that you see I'll give you is not such a big deal? Rashi doesn't not worried about it. The Rashi doesn't comment about it. Even if you're going to say that says that he was on a high mountain, you're still limited. Und a viel an mir soll sagen, as Avram is dann gestanden auf einem Berg, that he was at that time standing on a tall mountain. Und not he can then Ashetach Godel B'Yossi was able to see a very great area. Tzofaino, V'Negbo, V'Kedmo, V'Yomi was seen to the north and the south, to the east and to the west, to the Yam, is aber noch als a Deiche Godel zu sagen. Still, it would be very difficult to say, as hat von dort gekannt sein ganz Eretz Yisrael Wolosow, that he would be able to see all of Eretz Yisrael to all of its boundaries. Impossible. So what does it mean? So how come Rashi is not bothered? It says only what you're seeing. But it's not even a question. But Derech HaPshat, he says, Mikorek in Kashanim. But according to Pshat, to begin with, it's not a question. The land that you see needs to magbil sein dem shetach haaretz. That does not mean to limit the area of the land that I will give you. I'm only going to give you as es wird gegeben werden, nor wie viel that. It's only going to be given that's much as he sees. That is his blois as siman. That is only a sign welche land Eretz mevetim gem. It's just saying the sign which land is going to give him. The land that you see, the land that you're lying on, the land with the zez b'cholus farzich, that you see generally, that you see before yourself. This is the land, not the limitation of only what you can see. So the same thing is when it's lying. When Yaakov was lying, it's not a question. That Abisha said the land that you're lying on, it wasn't giving him only that piece of land. It was giving him haaretz. What is Rashi's question? Above. Shailin Pasuk was Rashi, the Oisins Bavaran is, what Rashi is trying to intend to caution us and answer over here is, why did he have to Bechlal tell him, Asher Ato Sheikhab Allah, that you're lying on? He says, haaretz, I'll give you. It's also the Eibishter Bechlal Gidaf Zugam. Why did the Eibishter have to add the Werter Sheikh of Allah that you're lying on, the Asiman of Eretz Yisrael, as a sign for Eretz Yisrael? As wohl doch gewen genug, it would have been sufficient. When sagt, wie steht, become a mekoimes, if he would say, as it's written in many places, Ha'oretz hazois l'choet nenu. This land I will give you, instead of saying Asher ato sheikhav Allah, that you're lying there. What does those words add? V'ishloime by Avram. We understand by Avram is verstandig for was the Eibishter hat gesagt zu ihm, why the Eibishter said to him, Son no einecha, goimer ha'oretz asher ato roya goimer. Raise your eyes, and the land that you see, I'm giving it to you. That is the usual way when you show the gift that you're about to give. To have a recognition in the item that you're giving them. That's why he's showing you. So that is when you show them. But what does it add that you're lying on it? The Riba led him to Rashi. That's why Rashi learns, Hashem folded all of Eretz Yisrael beneath him. By saying Ato Sheikh Allah is der Posik, is der Eibishter, given Oisen to give Masiman. Hashem was here giving a sign, nicht von Eretz, not on the land, what you're seeing, yes, is given Bashat Aroya, as it was what you see from Avromen, nor of Yaakov's Bailus Oifen Eretz. Hashem was given him showing him, in this case, I give him a sign for his uh, being in charge of a land. The dogma to kumis halach ba'oretz from Avram Kenal Sigdal is similar to what he said to Avram, go in the land that we said earlier in Sigdal. Hello. In Oizayin, the Rebbe explains that this answer, just to show Yaakov ownership, and that's why Hashem put it underneath his head. Ash'ata Sheichev Aleho gave him the not kippel, the gave him show him that he's lying there. That this is why the Eibishter added Sheichev Aleho to say that you are in charge. That alone would not be sufficient because Mele by Avram, it's not that the Eibishter sort of confirmed what he promised him by showing him the land. It's that he showed him to express the ownership over there. But over here by Yaakov, there was nothing of, he was just laying over there. So nobody saw it. Nobody appreciated that. He was just sleeping over there. So what did this accomplish that he became the owner, that he's sleeping there and the Eretz Yisrael is under his head? How does that really show and the ownership? And that's why the Rebbe explains that Rashi concludes that is a hint that is Neichel Kodesh. Let's look inside. Zai, das is aber noch nicht maspik. This is not yet sufficient to say that the Eibishter told him at the Sheichev Aleho just to show Bailus, just like by Abraham, in which he walked around to show his Bailus, his ownership. Der Tam le derech hapshat was der Eibishter had gesagt. The reason why, according to Pshat, Hashem said to Abraham, whom is halich ba'oretz, go in the land, is nicht, weil der mit wird starker der Haftoche for the Eibishter. It's not because that way Hashem's promise becomes stronger. L'choet nenu zarech, I'll give it to you and your children. This wasn't solidifying the promise. Al derech, the Rebbe says like this, al derech hadrush, if we're going to learn according to the Drush, we can say there's a difference. Is da achilek zwischen the Eibishter's Haftoche, between Hashem, what he promised, viznor bikoyach, as it is in the potential, and is verbunden mit apoyel, and how it is connected with practical. So there's one thing Hashem promised him to give him the land to Avram, and then Hashem tells him go ahead and walk around the land. Oh, but according to Pshat, we don't need to solidify anything. Is when the Eibishter is maftiach, felt neat in them that when the Eibishter promises, there's nothing lacking. Amazolas darfum verbinden mit poil, that you should need to tie it to something practical. So why did the Eibishter tell him to go around? No, das ist zu lieb Avromen. It's not because to solidify Hashem's promise, but it's for Avram's purpose. The Haftoche von dem Eibishter, ki lecho et neno, so by him der filled werden, so that he should sense the Hashem's promise, I will give you the land, in Haza Oifun, in such a way, zu führen sich schön v'abalabos in land, that he should feel like an owner of the land. So that's for Avram to feel that ownership. That she's telling him to walk around in the land. Land, as if it became his land. He walks around in Eretz Yisrael, the lands very free, being an eigenem land and in his own land. So over there it's understood why Hashem told him to go around. But here that he's laying down, he doesn't show any ownership by laying there. And on top of that, it wasn't even him doing it. He fell asleep. The Eberster came to him and told him that. Mashenkin bin in the dam by Yaakov, and as opposed to our kid by Yaakov, or the Eberster mekapel given kol Eretz Yisrael tachtov. The Eberster folded all Israel underneath him. When Yaakov had thereby Gor nit getan, zu weisen sein Balus, he didn't do anything to show his ownership. Keiner hat es nicht gesehen, nobody saw it, gewusst davon, nobody knew about it. Und noch mehr, and furthermore, so what's the purpose over here? Das Gufi ist nicht gewesen in an Eifon, als der Eberster hat gesagt, Schchoi v'lo. It was that the Eberster is telling him lie on it, like by there, walk in it. Didn't tell him to lie in it. But Vayishka, Yaakov hat sich gelegt ma'atzmai on his own. He lay down. Und noch dem, as schon dort tachtov, and after he was underneath, is Kippel HaKodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem folded the Nova Yachim, then he dreamt and not him gesagt, that this land is going to be given to you. But how is this a sign? How is Yaakov going to feel ownership by what Hashem did for him? And then in his dream, the Eibishter tells him that I going to give it to you. How is it going to increase that? Is was hat sich da aufgetan legabe Yaakov, and so what was been accomplished here with regards to Yaakov, mit dem was Kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol Eretz Yisrael tachta, with the fact that Hashem folded over Eretz Yisrael underneath him. Of them ches, of them is Rashi mamshich remez loi shet hei neichel lekavesh levonav. This has a hint that it's going to be. This has. Just like over there, he's showing him ownership. By Yaakov, the Eibishter is showing that this is going to be easy. Noicha lekavesh levonov. That's the dos was that the Eibishter gegeben Yaakov von Beilis of Eretz Yisrael blois durch sein Sheichevelo. The fact that the Eibishter made him own just by lying over there, this proves the point. Nicht wie bei Avram, which is given Kubis Halabaruch. He doesn't, dear by Avram, he need to go and walk the land. He has to do something. Over here, the Eberster gave him the ownership by lying over there. Is the Chiddush in the Haftoch Yaakov, the Gabe that Haftoch Avram. That is the novelty, the promise to Yaakov relative to the Haftoch Avram, that he doesn't even have to go around, not even like Avram had to walk around. In the Haftoch Yaakov is given their oiftu. In the promise to Yaakov was the accomplishment, the novelty as their kibush ha'oris durch bon v'tonkum and gring. That conquering the land through his children will come very easy. Onkin tircha, without any trouble. Their siman of sein bailis of Eretz Yisrael, the sign for his ownership of Eretz Yisrael is in an oifris in such a way as a dafter by gornit ton, he needs to do nothing about it. And liktala oretz. He's laying on the land. He's lying, he's sleeping. He's lying over there. Bakum dem Eretz from Ebersten, and he gets the land from the Ebersten. Kippel HaKodesh Baruch Hu kol Eretz Yisrael tachtav. The Ebersten folded Eretz Yisrael underneath him. This was the sign and the promise and the way that Eretz Yisrael will be given to him in a way that you're lying over there, not even doing anything. And the Rebbe points out now, this tells you that according to the Pshat, he didn't have to walk over there, he didn't have to do anything. According to the Gemara Uloir, to point out, that specifically learning in the simple way, this brings out a tremendous novel idea relative to what the Chazal sages blessed memory learned the Gemara. Der Gemara come to us according to the Gemara. It turns out as the Neuchel Kovesh Lefonov that when it's easy to conquer for his children is verbunden mit der Tirche, Apule v'Tirche von Bonov. It's still connected to an act and a trouble. The children have to do something about it. It's easy as for Amos, but they still have to do The Eberster showed him. A Koponim with the Tirche was mit haben by Koiver sein the Dal is similar to, but at least minimal you still need a little bit Tirche for Dal Damas. This will be easy. That's the way the Gemara learns. But Rashi to Toif Rashi be Pirusha La Torah, but Rashi in his Kamd in the Torah gives us this new idea. As euch die Tirche Ma'etes, weil die darfen anwenden beim Kibbush, that also even this minimal amount of effort, trouble, the Jews will not need to put into by when they conquer it. As wird bei sie sein in an Öfen von Sheiche V'Leho, it's going to be there lying on it, which means it's just going to happen. Und noch von früher, from before, in other words, not that Hashem didn't tell to lay down. He's laying or Sheiche V'Leho that you're already lying there from before. When the Eberste wird alles abtun, Hashem was going to do everything. Al derech v'Chizkiya Melech hat gesagt, similar to what King Chizkiya said, and Yoshin al mitosi v'atoise. I'll sleep on my bed and you're going to do it. So this is the meaning that it's going to be easier, not like Arba Amis. Rashi doesn't say like in the Gemara, because this is not like Arba Amis. It's going to be easier, meaning it's going to be effortless because you're lying over there. It's not the area. The space isn't the issue here, because it's not about the space over there. Malcolm, it's this, the general. It's just telling you what the land of Eretz Yisrael. But why did the Eberster have to say to tell him that this is going to be in a way of Shekhem Allah? This is the promise that Yaakov got. It's going to be easier even than by Avram. Pashteverter, es ist genug, als Jeden seine Shechem Allah. Simply meaning it's enough that Jeden is just lying there. Und alle Oilom, and all nations of the world, which you need to conquer. Seinen Meide al kol Eretz Yisrael. They agree, they admit for all Eretz Yisrael. Ganz Eretz Yisrael, Wolosow, all of Eretz Yisrael to all of its boundary, is Nachlas Olam von Am Yisrael, is the eternal inheritance of the Jewish people. Eden haben ganz Eretz Yisrael. Eden will have all of Eretz Yisrael on King Shumul Chamacholu without any war. Totally theirs. And that's the Chiddush. That means Sheikh Allah, that it's as easy as just sleeping on it. And will not even need to do even kovish dalad ames like in the Gemara. Test the bira bezebi primus yonim yeshleimer. What's the inner explanation, in the inner meaning of this? Rebbe explains that when there is the yichida shebenefesh, then the birurim are done automatically, which is the idea that at that point he connected it with the level of Yechida Hashem, so there is no war. Let's look inside. The bir was at Bepinimis Yonim Yeshleimer says, you do of us the Mitler Rebbe. It's known that without which the Mitler Rebbe, the Balagulav Asimcha for Yud Kislev, the one whose redemption and the one whose simcha is on Yud Kislev, is Mevar b'Mamor Ha'idua. He explains in his known Maimer, Ata Echod, the Maimer that starts Ata Echod, as in the Daled Ames von a mention is Meir B'chines Yechida Shebenefesh. In the 4 cubits of a person, over there, the Yechida of the soul shines there. The Yechida that cannot be contained within the Neshama comes in the Mokim of the Daled Ames. This is such a high surrounding level of Yechida. It cannot rest on the body, even in a surrounding way. When the far is does sich mispashet in the Daled Ames Shalom. That's why the level of Yechida expands to the 4 Ames of the person. But does is mekoyme, a person's place. Person takes up 4 Ames, so that becomes his space. Und das ist, was Kippel HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol Eretz Yisrael tachto. Means that Hashem folded all of Eretz Yisrael underneath Yaakov. I mean, the Daled Ames shel Yaakov, the Eibishter folded it all under the four Ames of Yaakov. Was der Mitoter verbunden the Beiles of Eretz Yisrael. That means the Eibishter tied the ownership of Eretz Yisrael mit Beginnes Yechida from Yaakov with the level of Yechida of Yaakov. That's his Daled Ames. Gave them to his Yechida. Uberderech Memela, but it's not just Yaakov. That's mit Bechinas Chidish Kol Achad Bachas Yisrael. Every man and woman of the Yidden, because as children of Yaakov, the Eibishter gave us Eretz Yisrael in a way connected to Yechida. Warum alle Neshama sein and Bonov. All of us are the children. Kolul Nemezich from Nishmas Yaakov. They're included, and they come from the soul of Yaakov. Und das ist euch der Tam. And this becomes, since we connected it to Yechida, that's also the reason was that it accomplished that it should be easier to conquer for his son. Bizas by Eden that design in an Eufen. To the extent by Eden will be away from Sheiche Veleho, that they will be able to take it easy just lying there. Because once we talk about the Yechida, it's a whole different level. Everything will be done in the above. Why? Because the level of Yechida, there's no opposition. But the Bechinas Yechida is Nichayach Kemenagid. In the level of Yechida, there is no nobody opposing. The far wird von dort aufgetan. That's why from there it's accomplished that Biru B'derech Memelo Me'elov, this sorting out on its own, automatically, on Milchama, without war, in an Eifim Shem Sholem, in a peaceful way. So the Rebbe explains that putting the Daled Ames means connecting Eretz Yisrael to the Yechida of Yaakov, and through Yechida of Yaakov with the Yechida of everyone, because that's the Daled Ames. And once we talk about Yechida, then it works automatically. Then it's Sheichev Aleha. You don't have to wage war. Things are all accomplished on its own. Yud Nochan Inyan Niflo. Then there's another additional very wondrous idea was kumtsu in Pirush Rashi ala Torah, which comes to us when Rashi's explanation of the Torah, legabe droshas Chazal, the Gemara, relative to the Gemara's drosha in the Gemara. Gemara state, the Gemara said, those was kofla kodesh baruch hu chulu, the Eibishter folded is given their tam. The reason why some folder is so it should be easier to conquer for his son. That the Eibishter invested, gave a power to Eretz Yisrael. As Acher man, the Eibishter folded it, that the power that he gave Eretz Yisrael, that after time when Oibid will gain their Einem, and when and if the Jews will go and conquer it, but the kibush da must onkommen gering, so the conquering then will come on easy. And I give it to you, and you see the Eibishter that is given. Aber as Eden wollen gain einnehmen, in ein Eufen von Neuche Chulu, is nicht gesagt geworden. But that the Yidden will take it. The Eibishter says that if they will go, the Eibishter did it. We're not saying, Rashi says that the Eibishter is a remes for what's going to happen. Over there, the Eibishter did it, but he gave the power in the land, but the Yidden still have to do it. In Anoy von Euche is nicht gesagt geworden. But that the Yidden will, as Yidden will, the promises made it in there, but that the Yidden will do, David didn't say that. That's Rashi's edition. And as the Rebbe points out, that hindsight and leider, today, unfortunately, we see that it's not so simple, even though David gave this koyach. But as a Zayin Faran Azelchi Yidden, Rachmon al-Islam, there's such Yidden, God forbid, was darf mit say einteinen that we need to sort of convince them, argue with them, as God says Yisrael Wolosow, that all of Eretz Yisrael, to all of its boundaries, gehert, so Midrashim folk as an Achlas Olam belongs to the Jewish people as an eternal heritage. Rashi hyped on Pirush Torah. It was surprising that even Yidden have to convince. Rashi brings down that the Goyim complain, but here we have Yidden we have to convince. Rashi hyped on Pirush Torah. Rashi begins his commentary in the Torah as blois umas ha'olam ve'on kumitz again tainen. There was to be the nations of the world will argue, list him atem your bandits. Unochme. Bald as Torah emes zogt was medarvze answeren. Since Torah says what you have to answer them, that Eibishter gave it to us. The land belongs, all of the earth belongs to Hashem. Willingly, he took it from them and gave it to us. Is verstandig, is understood as them answer to the Umm. If you only give the answer to the nations of the world, as one should present and give over Hashem's words and mission, with the richtigen Teufel, with the proper force, as his own filun adozayin and dvarim hayetzim and alev, that they should feel these are words coming from the house. But does the gamrim mevatel zayin them irun for the umm. This will totally negate any complaints of going. That's what Rashi says. They complain. This is what we answer. So we know. Unfortunately, we have Yidden. They say just the opposite. So it's the Jewish people that we have to deal with, argue with. So therefore explains details and adds in his commentary the Torah of Loshna Gemara. He hinted to him that it will be easier to conquer for him. The Eibishter Maram given to Yaakov. The Eibishter hinted to Yaakov. And through him also to his son. But those gufis and his sinas koyach utvia. This itself is an encouragement. And it gives, wakes us up, it gives us power and a demand. Because we know that they're going to do. The Eibishter says he hinted they're going to do. So this is not just a hint what's going to happen, but this is actually an encouragement and the sinas utvia. Warum the ganze Bria is miyusat of kol mashabara kodesh baruch hu be'ilomei, because the whole creation is based whatever Hashem created, like there's nothing in vain. So when Allah's kama v'kama when Hashem is esmeramis, so if Hashem makes a hint, it's not just something which is not going to come to fruition, or it's just like that. It's an encouragement. As Hashem od giton nit dover echot stam nor agiz nes godel. He made a great middle kippel. He did it to show, to represent that this is an encouragement for us. But Shleimer, as Loi Pirush Rashi is the Pirush, that according to Rashi, we can say further, Shetehei, that it will be as es vet zayin. The Eibishter Baram is given to Yaakov and Ametzias. The Eibishter hinted to him that there is going to be a fact, Ametzias, as Bonov, Velun Einem that it's all that they will conquer it in an easy way. It's not like a blessing or that it should, but it will be. It's a difference to say when you say Shetahei that it should be or that it would be. They will conquer it easily. Varum? Where is that? If Torah. Shasoif Yisrael asks tshuva b'sev gulusam. In the end, the Yidden will do tshuva in the end of Golus. Koilul oich, which will include as Ali Yidden ve'elnstein noch begulusam, that all Yidden while still in Golus with Nemes and Toikef, with the true force of unhelping Ganzer Yisrael Wolosow, to hold on to all of Eretz Yisrael, to all the boundaries, whereas with Zayin and Yadhim Negolim, immediately they'll be redeemed al the Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meiru v'yameinu mamish. Through our righteous Mashiach very quickly in our days. This is Mesichas, Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Vayetzei Tovshin Lamet Tes.